Speaking of being self-contained, welcome to the May 26, 2017 edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. Let's get a quick take on the City of Denver launching a pilot program this summer aimed at eviction prevention and assistance. The proposal would use $1.5 million for emergency housing, utility assistance, and access to housing advocates. Meanwhile, a temporary tiny housing community is set to be completed in Denver's Rhino neighborhood as part of a 180-day pilot program. Patty Calhoun from Westward, a lot to choose from here. You have the City of Denver trying to do something about affordable housing, but it's $1.5 million, which in the big scheme of things, I'm not sure is enough money. And then you have tiny houses coming up in Rhino. Take your pick.
Well, they're both part of the city's program because the city had to get permission to have this tiny house community built. Under Denver's current planning and zoning, you have to be able to hook up a tiny house to plumbing and to electricity. So there were a lot of service providers, religious institutions that had parking lots where they would have liked to have put tiny houses. They had to get the okay from the city to test this out. It's only going to be a little more than 20 units. They will be mobile, not right away. No one's going to haul them away in the middle of the night, but it's a good effort right now. No one thinks they're going to be there that long because in Rhino, what is there that long until it's the lot is covered with a big apartment complex? I think it's a smarter move by the city to put in a fund because it's better to take care of people before they become homeless. So if by giving them some more time, if by giving them some access to some money, they can stay where they're living, that is certainly a greater good.
Mike Krause, the Independence Institute. It seems like a pretty good program from just the way it's been described in different stories. But tiny houses in Rhino, I'm not sure if that's the right Denver neighborhood. I mean, Rhino doesn't need any help when it comes to development. I'm not sure if that's where the homeless capital is, but it is nearby other poor neighborhoods. What do you think of the proposal and the tiny house program in Rhino?
Well, look. Let's face it. The tiny house movement, as they say, is, for lack of a better term, a hipster movement amongst young people who, frankly, don't need city assistance to buy or build a tiny house if that's what they want to live in. This is more like a movement to downsize and to have less stuff is what it really is. And what the city is wanting to do is to try and use it as an experiment in a temporary, probably highly temporary housing for homeless people. Here's the problem. The big picture problem is that is that if people want to build and live in tiny houses, you might not be able to do it in Denver because of the land costs, but there's no reason why people can't go do this on their own, build a tiny house, just like people build houses or build housing in the private sector. Whenever Denver talks about affordable housing, we should always take the word affordable out and insert the word subsidized, because that's what they're really doing. And the problem with Denver's, not just this, but the bigger picture plan that they're doing is that Denver's wanting to spend a lot of other people's money to try and make a very, very small amount of housing a little bit more affordable for a very small number of people. That is no solution. There is no possible way for Denver to subsidize enough housing to meet the demand for more affordable housing in Denver. So what they really need to be looking at is the bigger picture, which is housing affordability, which is an economy where lots of different people, lots of different income scales can afford housing. And unfortunately, what that means is that they're going to have to undo a lot of the policies that they've built up over the years, designed to make Denver a very, very expensive city. And frankly, there's a Joel Kotkin, who's a demographer, talks about the difference between an opportunity city and a luxury city. San Francisco being a luxury city, Houston being an opportunity city. Denver long ago decided it wanted to be a luxury city, and now it's paying the price with the fact that a lot of people can't afford to live here. Well, to the extent that it is within people's means to do so, the logical conclusion to that is to go somewhere you can afford to live. And then the city can deal with the people who don't have the means to do that. So that should be the advice that the city is giving to people first before trying to subsidize their way out of a housing issue.
Penfield Tate, attorney at QTAC Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. I looked at the $1.5 million and it seemed, I'm not going to just turn my nose at it. $1.5 million is still a lot of money, but when it comes to a city government, a city as big as Denver, trying to do something like at least do something about affordable housing, I'm not sure if it seemed a lot. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Is this enough money to get things started?
No, but it's better than nothing. And I agree with Mike's larger point, and it's an issue that the city has struggled with and the state has struggled with for a number of years, And we tend to get twisted up in these political battles over home defects legislation and everything else, which are all surrogates for the real issue, which is we are building a state and select communities where we are, by design, reducing and restricting who can afford to be there. So we can talk about we want diversity, we want, mixed communities and everything, but that's not how cities are trying to develop. They're chasing the biggest economic development deal they can get. They're trying to bring in the best paying jobs they can get. It's the best, the best, the best. And when that is your entire motivation consistently, you by definition are going to push some people out of the community you have. Look where we're based now. I mean, this studio is on Welton Street, and what used to be a much more diverse community is not. It is part of this hipster movement where you have young, predominantly Anglo couples moving into the inner city, and the traditional residents who historically have been African American and Hispanic are being priced out of the neighborhood. They can't afford the taxes. They certainly can't buy. Their kids can't afford to come here and buy in the neighborhoods where they grew up. So all of these neighborhoods are changing. And the city and other political forces are encouraging that demographic and economic shift, because that's how we're measuring whether a city or community is prosperous. So this is a good start. There's a real problem, but at the end of the day, at some point, we need to sit down as a community and talk about how we do economic development, how we do housing development. We got to get the insurance providers at the table, because how they insure construction is part of the issue, as well as construction defects.
Hans Meyer joins us from the Meyer Law Office. First time to the table, so welcome. So we're sitting here looking at this proposal, or this program from the city, $1.5 million. We're seeing what they're trying to do with it. A good start, a cop-out, somewhere in between. What do you think?
Well, I grew up in this town, from when I was 1 year old. And it's a different place. And I think all the comments are well taken. I don't know where we land on this. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, here's the issue. We have a major housing crisis in Denver. We have drivers for development and for economic development completely changing the fabric of all of the neighborhoods in Metro Denver. Nobody would disagree about that. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to do nothing? Are we going to have a lot of government intervention? What are we going to do in the private sector? And at this point, I think obviously there are reactive solutions to the current state of affairs, and then there are proscriptive solutions. At least for the tiny housing project, maybe it's a proscriptive solution worth investigating, right? There's going to be different ways that we're going to try to solve this. Some of them aren't going to work. Some of them aren't going to be viable. Some of them don't make economic sense. But I think at this point it's worth us trying, because we have a major issue on our hands in this city and as well as around the state, and we might as well get all the cards on the table. And I think it makes sense to take a chance to try some of these things out, figure out which ones are going to work, and then begin to do something about it. But that doesn't address the underlying drivers, which is what's creating the conditions that we're currently living in.
That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out postgame this week. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.